anyway. We'll have to see. But yeah, I'll just give a quick bit of background for those who don't know about Axiom. Axiom is an enterprise marketplace platform that's changing the way businesses buy. So we're simplifying procurement by reimagining catalog sourcing and automating free text ordering, all through one platform, which is powered by AI. There's built-in marketplace access, intelligent sourcing, and inventory as well, control. So it's a really great platform if you've never heard of it. But yeah, this is the first webinar of 3 in our series. The one after, we'll be diving into free text ordering in September. And the one after that, we'll explore inventory and materials management. But we'll share more on that at the end, but definitely keep them on your radar. And with that, I think we've got everyone in. So I'll hand off to Alistair and Joël to kick things off. But thank you so much for joining so far.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lydia. So yeah, good. I'll just say good day to everybody. So I'm Alistair, one of the co-founders of Axiom. We actually just celebrated our 5th birthday last week. Prior to Axiom, I'd spent 25 years in the world of ProcureTech solutions, working for 4 big BPO organizations, so constantly selling to the enterprise organization. And we took an opportunity in 2020 to found Axiom because we wanted to take a sort of data science approach to transactional procurement data, and we've sort of evolved from there, which I'll explain a little bit later. But Joël, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and very happy to be here. So Joël Collin-Demers, I'm the consulting principal and head editor at Pure Procurement and the Pure Procurement newsletter. So for me, it's all about helping procurement professionals, digitally minded procurement professionals, get a leg up on their digital literacy and use technology to benefit their business objectives and execute on their strategy, right? And the objective I have for today's webinar is 2 things, right? So for people who are on legacy catalog programs, so you've got a source to pay suite, or if you've got an ERP system, you're using punch-out catalogs or hosted catalogs, what are some tips and tricks that you can implement today and walk away with from this webinar to get value in your day-to-day life? And then the second objective is exposing you to the art of the possible when we switch the paradigm with a next-gen platform like Axiom, right? And I love what the folks at Axiom are doing, and Alistair and the team, and that's why I wanted to participate today, right? So I'll make sure that you get those 2 things from today's session.
Fantastic. And talking about today's session, we've got quite a lot to get through. So just in terms of where we're going to start, we're going to ask the question, does catalog chaos actually exist? And if it does, what is it? We're then going to touch on what traditional tech has tried to do in the catalog space and why we don't believe it's actually going to solve the problem. And that's an increasing problem that we see. We'll then just take a step sideways, and we'll just say, what do people really want from the catalog program? When we say leaders and people, who are they within organizations? Because I think that is changing also. We'll then just dive quickly into our managed marketplace platform. And one of the objectives that people always talk to us about is this drive that procurement has to automate as many transactions as possible. So how's the platform delivering on that promise? Then another key question that we always get asked, the old AI question. So we'll just dive into a little bit about that, about how we're using AI to drive outcomes, not just a function. And then we'll sort of slow the pace down a little bit, and we'll go back to some of the sort of tips and tricks from Joël, and also we'll just bust a few myths that people have about catalog sourcing. Okay, so just in terms of, let's go right back to the start. Does catalog chaos really exist? Some of you may know that a couple of 18 months or so ago, we did a LinkedIn poll that actually really caught fire. It was really interesting. We asked people what their biggest challenges were with catalogs, and we got an incredible response, not just in terms of the number of people, but the breadth of organizations and industries and the global spread of it as well, and in terms of different job categories. So I think when we look at that 405 people, I think we had 70% practitioners, 25% came from the consulting environment. And I think the resounding sort of answer was yes, catalog chaos is a real thing and it does exist. Joel, anything there that stands out for you?
No, and I think, something to highlight, I believe you had, the main contributors were like manufacturing, oil and gas, pharma, consumer goods. So we see we see that there's more catalog chaos when there's more products to handle, right? So the larger the amount of SKUs you have in your business, the more chaos there is probably.
Yeah. And I think the interesting thing for me as well was the sort of breadth of sort of job roles, if you like, that responded to it. So I think we had something like 18 CPOs chip in as well, which is obviously really interesting. So it's obviously high on the agenda of challenges for people to overcome. So, okay, let's just take another sort of deeper dive. So what is this catalog chaos? We know it exists, but what is it? When we did the original survey, we focused, just because of the constraints around LinkedIn and their pollability, we focused on the sort of 4 key questions. And as you can see here from this this chart, that data came out as people's biggest frustration around supplier data quality, followed by the second area of this inability to compare items easily across catalogs. And then the whole thing around linked to that, spending too much time searching, can't track savings, we're sort of sitting behind those. But what was really interesting is that it sparked a lot of conversation outside and around the poll and subsequently, in terms of that's not really, that's the surface of the catalog chaos. And then I think people started to really sort of dive into the details. And what came to fore is the fact that when people talk about catalogs, it means different things to different people and different organizations. So you have this environment where you've got hosted punch-out catalogs, even as far back as price books. And then within those, you've got some of those that are supplier managed, client managed, IT managed. So in itself, you've got complexity there. And then you have a look at the platforms that they're sitting on. And this really sort of surprised me, and it continues to grow. So organizations, obviously multiple source to pay platforms out there, but also organizations developing their own platforms. People are obviously using marketplaces to some degree. We're seeing more and more orchestration and intake coming to play. Where does it fit with the wider ProcureTech stack? But one thing that was quite interesting for me is talking to individuals in the same organization, the fact that that landscape across a global organization may also be different. So we've got organizations that we're talking to have got sort of 47 different instances of source to pay systems across their geographies, and they may have a SAP Ariba in one environment, they may have a Coupa in another. So that's a degree of complexity to add into the mix as well. Then you layer on top of that the sort of people element. So multiple owners of different catalogs in different countries or the same country, you get the churn of people, so you lose knowledge, different processes that people are working to. And then you start getting into the whole sort of control elements, all the way from the sort of basic management information through to price governance, through to Joel's favorite area of master data. And then the one that actually jumped out for me really was a couple of people made some fairly sort of bold statements in terms of we've got our catalog program, but oh my God, how frustrating is it when a buyer gets to a dead end? They've done all this searching across all of these sort of catalogs and systems, etc., but they still can't find what they're looking for. So that sort of added another or multiple layers of depth to the catalog chaos that we see.
And just, Alistair, if you don't mind, like I'm thinking there might be folks on the call who don't even have a catalog program today. And like I'd just start with your first bubble around hosted punch-out price books, right? The difference between the supplier sending me an Excel file with their prices and me maintaining it in the system is hosted. Punch-out is me punching out to the supplier's website. And like and just being able to handle those two realities at the same time kind of creates all these other issues as well, right? So if you don't have a catalog program today, like these might surprise you, but you're layering complexity on top of complexity, and I think we'll get to that, right? But I'd love to know in the chat, right? Do you have other challenges that you don't see on here with catalog pricing, and we might be able to address those as we go as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And that sort of leads us on to sort of so what does that deliver or impact for people? And it boils down to really sort of 3 things. It's one, people are wasting a lot of time with their current catalog program. If you think about a catalog, it sounds so simple. It should be the easiest purchase anybody makes in the organization, but there's a huge amount of time being wasted. People are wasting budget because we know that people aren't able to find the cheapest item they often go to the first catalog where they can find what they're looking for and just buy it because they want to just get back to life. And as I said before in my sort of introduction, the volume of resource that's tied up in catalog programs is significant. You think about it not just from the sort of procurement on the client side with different people in different countries managing the same content, but you then also turn that lens onto the poor supplier. And I've spoken to organizations who have to manage 70 different catalogs for one enterprise organization. That's an enormously sort of inefficient process. And this is sort of brought to life to me this week with a procurement client who said he'd just have a really sort of interesting conversation with one of his users. So a pharma organization, as you can see, and this was an individual scientist who spends his day in the laboratory, fully PPE'd up. And so he would go into the laboratory in the morning, and then at lunchtime he would sort of deroad, try and grab a sandwich, and that would be when he would try and find the items that he wanted for next week's experiment or whatever it might be. And he was finding more and more of his time was taken up in his lunch break and not finding the right thing. And then, he'd have to sort of robe up again and go in, and then he'd carry on that same process in the evening. And what sits behind this chaos ultimately are frustrated users, really. I think there's a lot of frustration sitting around how organizations manage capital. And when you see it, when it boils down to actually users phoning procurement to say, guys, this is crazy, you've got a problem.
Yeah, and I think that's a great lead into the next slide, right? Around so why is that all happening, right? Because we've talked about traditional technology, or I mentioned legacy technology at the up front. So legacy technology, or just a source to pay suite, an ERP, right? When you set up catalogs, you're essentially just digitizing the old manual catalog process. So what do I mean by that? The old manual catalog process, I have a bunch of physical catalogs that I flip through one by one, and then I find the same items or comparable items, and I look at the price, compare the prices. Maybe I don't find it in multiple catalogs, so I looked in a few catalogs for no reason, which is also happening virtually, right? Because your users are searching, then they might go to a punch-out catalog, come back, go to another punch-out catalog, come back. And so there's a lot of time just gathering information around, like, okay, where do I want to buy this? Where is it available? Where's the best price, right? And that's if your user is diligent in doing that. And so old tech has tried to solve the problem by just digitizing the old physical catalog method instead of rethinking it from first principles and saying, okay, we have all these catalog items, this catalog data. How do we bring it together in a centralized platform so that I can enable comparison, suggestions, price, or pushing users towards items with the best price, right? And so if I want to get those outcomes in today's world, there's increasing administrative burden, as we've outlined in the previous slides. There's data islands because I may have good data from a supplier in one country or geography or region within a country and not in another, depending on who my rep is and what the IT systems are for the supplier in the background. And my landscape is also changing very quickly, right? We've seen it with the geopolitical realities today. Like, my category strategy is changing every week, every month, instead of yearly for a very stable outline agreement or contract with a supplier. And so the old tech is kind of failing us with this old paradigm of just digitizing the old catalog process. And I'd love to know, like, if you're living through that, if you have a catalog program in the chat, right? But essentially what we're having to deal with is, if we want certain functionality, then we don't get simplicity, right? We get complexity, and we need to invest a lot of time and energy and budget into getting the data right, getting the profiles right for users, getting the control that we want, so that we can reach the right people with the right pricing information at the right time and give them a good experience, right? So it's very admin intensive to get a catalog program right today. And so how can we flip that on its head is really what Axiom has been working on, right? And so I think if we go back to first principles, and Alistair, I know you're about to do that, and think about, okay, who are our stakeholders? There's buyers or requesters, there's procurement, there's suppliers, which are our main three, but then there's also finance and IT in the background. And so what do these people want, right? And so Alistair, I think it's a good segue into looking at what those leaders want.
Yeah,
I
no,
was going to
fantastic.
say, sorry to interrupt, but you have a question that goes in quite well with this, Joel. Do you have a solution for products that are reaching EOL and should no longer be visible in the catalogue? Can Axiom identify these products and remove them from the catalogue?
Oh, EOL being
End
end
of
of
life.
life, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have a solution for end of life products that shouldn't be visible in the catalog? I'll let you answer that, Al.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I mean, I think one of the sides that of the platform is when suppliers upload their product data and all the pricing that goes with it, they can set a time for that pricing and that product to expire. So they can set that up front. If products expire sort of outside of the sort of planned expiry, it's very simple to just go on to the platform and simply upload the product that has been expired and just remove it from the catalog. And if that is across multiple instances, in effect, it will remove it from every instance of the environment. So yeah, no, good question.
And Alistair, I'd highlight like when you say upload, like these all sound like manual tasks, and they can be if the supplier needs to do them manually, but they can also be automated via API as well, right? So that, you know, if you're fetching that data from a supplier, you're not putting a burden on a supplier specifically to maintain all that. Like if they have it maintained in their system that there's an end of life for the product, then it'll be brought in automatically.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the things that we sort of, when we started to look at building the platform, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, we looked at it from all the various persona angles. And I think we recognized just how clunky it can be for suppliers managing their data with source to pay systems and others. So it was definitely around, you know, how can we make it as simple and easy as possible and automate that as much as possible. So you're right, Joel, there are multiple ways that people can upload data or connect data via APIs. So there's a real-time data exchange just to make that as simple and as painless as possible. Fantastic. I think the other piece, just before we move on from here, that just I'll just sort of add into the mix is just comes back to that horrible word AI that everybody always uses. I think, you know, the traditional tech stacks in this space, you know, have all been around for a while. So when, you know, something like the power of AI, whatever version, however you want to describe it and use it, or whatever model you want to do, when you're trying to sort of integrate new technology into an old stack, I think that's quite a challenging sort of thing to do. So I think users have a very high expectation of the buying experience, and I just think the technology that exists at the moment and historically hasn't been able to deliver that environment, which again just sort of segues nicely into the next little piece around, you know, looking at, we call this what leaders actually want, but we'll broaden that into what are the personas that want to source from catalogs need. And as Joel said, we talked about some of the personas. You know, when we boil it down, we'll talk first of all about the buyer or the requester. You know, we're all buyers and requesters. We're all buyers of things. We're used to at home having this incredible sort of e-commerce experience. And yet it seems as soon as we walk into the office environment, it feels like we've walked back 10 or 15, 20 years with very clunky processes, very difficult to find things, etc. So they want speed, they want ease, they want to be able to buy things all in one place. They don't want to have to go into one catalog for this, another catalog for that, another system for that. They want to be able to say, I want to buy these 3 things, a couple of products and a service all in one place. They also want it personalized for them. So they want to be able to go onto a platform and they want to be able to see what they bought previously. But fundamentally, when you talk to these people, what they actually want to do is get back to what they're paid to do, get back to their day jobs as quickly as possible. So, you know, we're sort of boiling it back down to, you know, the reality of what do people actually need to make their working lives easier. When we think about procurement, I also put in here the content managers, because depending on the scale of the organization, they're often 2 different roles, but all sit under the procurement umbrella. And the first thing that people will always talk to me about is just how much manual activity that they are involved in managing pricing and content and price changes. So the idea of reducing that, automating that as much as possible is a real sort of driving principle. And with that then comes visibility and control. If you think about a sort of historical catalog program, there's a huge lift that goes into getting it set up, and then basically it's just left to run because there's too much effort. People don't really get enough management information or intel as to what's really happening, and then procurement get involved when there's a problem, when a price change or the end of year price negotiation. So they want to change that paradigm. And the other piece, sorry, Joel, just quickly, is the ability to measure savings. Go on, dive in.
And I was going to add to what you were saying, Alistair, just in the sense where, and that's, I think there's drift towards, for procurement and content managers, just enabling punch outs, just right, because I don't want to receive files on a monthly or weekly basis and have to update pricing and then have to update roles to reflect the pricing that they should have visibility to, and it becomes very heavy. So we by default we go, okay, let's just set up a punch out catalog and send users to the supplier's website. But what that does is it creates the user has to go to the website, come back, go to another website, come back, and then they end up not doing that because it's too heavy. So they just go to the first supplier who's got in their mind is associated with what they want to buy. They buy it. You don't get any savings. You also don't get any visibility into which punch outs they went into and what they searched and why. And so you have no insights in terms of what are my users doing in the catalog platform and how can we tailor the experience or tailor the content that's in there so that we actually give them what they need and what they're spending on, right? Instead of, to your point, getting to a dead end and not being able to find what they need, and then everybody loses, right? Because we're, as procurement, spending all this time maintaining data or maintaining punch out connections, and the users aren't even using them because they don't find what they want.
Yeah, and sort of bringing that to sort of life with sort of real stories I think most people will know that we had the amazing opportunity to do a co-creation journey with Roche about 4 years ago when we created the enterprise marketplace platform. And talking to Patrick Falk at the time, he was saying they would just swapped source to pay systems, and he was saying we listened to what users wanted, and they wanted more choice, they wanted more content. So we gave them 300 catalogs. And he said, in hindsight, that was the worst thing we could do. We absolutely deluged people with content that they then found even more difficult to navigate and to find what they're looking for. So, sometimes just understanding, what the requirement is. In fact, what they didn't want was more content. What they wanted to do is to be able to find the items every time they went on the platform. The reason they wanted more content was because sometimes they couldn't find an item, so they just assumed more catalogs would mean they'd be able to find the items. But as Joel said, when you got under the skin of how they're actually buying, because they'd been so badly bitten previously, they'd just go onto a favorite catalog, the catalog that had 2 million products, and they would just hope they found the item on that catalog. So yeah. The other side, obviously, that we sort of touched on is the procurement on the content providers. And again, I know we've got some on the call today. Fantastic. Again, all people want at the end of the day is simplicity and ease. For suppliers, it's a conduit for them to promote and sell their products. So we want to make it as easy as them to help the customers. You talk to suppliers, so aside from the ability to manage data, easily connect data, easily update data, the idea of being able to control pricing simply by business unit, by country, run promotions, things that you would do very easily in a normal sort of e-commerce environment. But when you're sort of plugged into a source to pay system, sort of, that's like pouring sand in the gears. And the other piece that sort of frustrates suppliers enormously, and I get it, is they have this huge lift to get their content onto source to pay platforms. And then apart from receiving orders, they don't know anything. They don't get any intelligence back. So no one's helping them help the customer. So from their perspective, it's very much around, what insights can I see? Because the more I can see, the more I can help ensure that we got the right products available in the right locations.
A good
And
question,
then,
Al, has come in for suppliers
yeah.
before you go on to the next one. So someone's asked, do you have supplier ranking, such as primary suppliers bubble to the top of search results?
Yeah, so I'll talk about that in a minute when we look at the platform, but basically all that sits on the procurement control panel, which basically procurement can then program the platform for each location geography, so they can have preferred suppliers that then the algorithms pick up and promote. They can have mandatory suppliers, etc. So yes, great question.
And just before you go on to the next ones, like to me, for suppliers, the value proposition is crazy, right? Because at the beginning, it's like, why would I share my data? But then you share the data because you get the insights back, right? Of like, what were the search results? Where did you come in the search results in terms of pricing, in terms of, did you get in the basket? Did you get the sale, right? Did you get all this information? And so you get out of the, you can get out of this, negotiate a yearly contract every year with suppliers, and you could go, hey, here are all the insights, and like we're going to source at the catalog level, right, at every transaction. So if you want more of my business in another category which we didn't even negotiate for, you can have it. Just give me the best price, like in my catalog platform, right? And so it gives you all this insight and information, which you can then turn into actions that get you more business, right? To that sell more stuff little bullet at the bottom there.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. I mean, we see suppliers going on a journey using the platform as well. It starts off, is this just another platform? And then when I think they can see the simplicity, the level of control, but when they can get these insights back, then they're going, hang on a minute, I've got something here that I can actually really use to drive more transactions. There is no point a supplier sort of having products on the platform that are 15-20% more expensive than somebody else providing the same product. They have the visibility to that to say, well, okay, with the platform can say, this organization spent X million in this category. If your pricing had been at a different level, you could have secured 250,000 of that as opposed to 120,000 of that. That's massively valuable to the organization. So from the supplier side, we see a huge amount of sort of engagement with the analytics within the platform.
And another great question's come up, Alistair. Sorry if you don't mind me butting in.
No, dive in.
Someone said, it's great to be able to see the catalogues and products, but what about seeing availability and when I expect to receive the goods? This is an area of interest, but a problem when hosting distributors' catalogues. Is this something you have encountered or have a solution for?
Well, I think in terms of availability is always a challenging aspect. I mean, we know across all the customers that people buy, yes, primarily buy on price, but they also buy on what's available. One of the neat things that we do with API is the ability at the point of search is to go out to a supplier's catalog their environment and pull real-time data back around current inventory and current delivery times. So we want to try and keep the information as live as possible. And I think there's a realization across the users of the platform that it does all fundamentally boil down to data. The better quality of the data, the more update the data, the better the end result is for everybody.
And
I think
the other
I can see
piece
a hand raise.
I'd add to what you were saying, Alistair, on that responses and having all that data in one place at that point in time, right? At the point of search. And so if you're able to pull the APIs based on the search query and bring back the data, right, to answer the question is like whatever the supplier can supply in terms of information, whether it's inventory, lead times, there's a question around configurable products as well, right? Like whatever the supplier can provide, we can serve to the user, or you can serve to the user at the point of search.
Yeah, and I think at that point of search as well, it's very easy for procurement to say, I want to rank the search based on cheapest price, but they can also rank it on preferred supplier, or they can rank it on availability, etc. Whatever the key dynamic is for them. So the point is, we want the buyer to have the information at their fingertips to make the best buying decision at that point.
And I'd take the opportunity to answer that another question I see around how do you envision to work with configurable product portfolios? And I think that the answer is also kind of like we've seen at the beginning, like what causes chaos? It's the need to support a bunch of different formats and a bunch of, in the different regions, et cetera. And I think your platform, Alistair, correct me if I'm wrong, but does allow for that support of different methods, right? So if you do want to support a punch out because it's very, very highly configurable products, you can still do that, right? It's just you're always trying to push everybody into serving the results and serving the data upfront in the user in a centralized fashion, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's absolutely spot on. That's absolutely right. We know suppliers have some very customizable products. It doesn't make sense for that functionality to be replicated. But as you say, supporting the ability to punch out for that configuration, then bringing that back into the platform is critical. I think the other point to mention is we often talk about people making a purchase. What we're seeing now across our various clients is the size of baskets increasing. In the old days, people would go and say, I need to buy something, and they'd go and find that item and they'd check out. They'd then say, I need to buy something else. They'd go to another catalog, do that, and check out. Obviously, one of the functionalities within Axiom is the fact that they can buy everything they want in a single sitting. So you can have a basket with multiple suppliers, products, services across multiple organizations. So that changes the way people work. So you can go out and get your configurable quotation and bring that back into a basket that has your mouse mat and your whatever else in it in the same sitting again.
Yeah, and then you handle the complexity of feeding that back to the transactional system to say, does this need to be different requisitions, the same requisitions, straight to order, right? Handling that logic so that the user is not stuck, having to live with a constraint, right? Because I've been in that situation where like, oh, well, the system we're using, you can't create a requisition with multiple vendors, right? And so then you're training users on saying, okay, you can use the catalogs, but you can only get stuff from one vendor at a time, and then you need to save your requisition and then start all over again, right? And so that's something we haven't touched on, but how do we feed that data downstream so that your purchasing data and purchasing processes work the way they're supposed to without putting that burden on the user and user training, right?
Yeah, yeah. And from our perspective, that all goes back in, all those credentials go back in the basket, which then allows the source to pay system to take over the usual PR to PO process. So there's no change from that perspective. We're just allowing the buyers, the requesters to do all of their complex searching in one environment and punch that single basket back. Absolutely. So just quickly, when we think about audiences, if you like, the often forgotten parties are finance and IT. Unfortunately, finance probably get involved in catalog purchasing way more than they'd want to, and I think a lot of that it boils down to price discrepancies on hosted content that's out of date, but somebody's gone to buy it and they've made the purchase and then the suppliers rejected it because it's not their current pricing. For another aspect, this finance obviously love is the ability to capture savings and have the ability to do that. However, the organization sets their savings rules, so whether it's cost avoidance, P&L, price drop, etc. So the flexibility to record savings in a number of ways. Finance really want no noise, and similar to IT, outside the sort of security, they want things that are going to sit within their wider tech stack very easily, so simple connection, but they don't really want to be involved aside from that. And in terms of the connection into source to pay systems, it takes a couple of weeks. Fastest we've done it is in a couple of days, so it's very easy, and once it's done, it's done. And we I don't often talk to IT from there on inwards. Sorry if there's anyone from IT.
Which is a shame because they're lovely people.
Okay. So having sort of taken that sounding in terms of what people wanted, as I said, we had this amazing opportunity to work with Roche and to build the platform from the ground up, create something completely new, a completely different stack. And effectively what Axiom is, as Lydia said right at the beginning, is an enterprise marketplace platform. I'll just run the animation, you can see it, and just sort of talk you through some of the elements of it. So it allows organizations to create this closed marketplace of all of their content-based suppliers across any category, products and services, programmed with the organization's procurement rules. And you can see here on the right-hand side, someone searching for a couple of items. You might have noticed that first item, the supplier, the purchaser actually just bought it from their usual supplier, not the cheapest. We'll see how that works next. And then for this flashlight environment, we're seeing that the platform promoted a procurement preferred item. And then this is the item where they couldn't find the item on the platform. And so the platform kicks into what we call market source, an automated sourcing activity. Just sort of going back to the platform, we make it very simple to connect to the current tech stack. So very easy to integrate with orchestration providers, source to pay, ERP, chatbots, etc. So it acts as a simple punch out, incredibly straightforward. I talked before about the different sides of the platform. So the three sides, the buyer portal that we're seeing here. So creating this sort of one-stop shop buying environment, allowing people to know that they're buying within the guide rails of the organization. So they'll only see the products that they're authorized to see and approved to buy. The hub of the platform is the procurement control center, and this really puts procurement right in the middle of the solution. So this allows them to control everything. It allows them to program the platform with their procurement policy. And the fundamental change piece is not just the ability to track savings, but also generating a huge amount of analytics, insights, and actions that procurement should take. And one particular area that we'll talk a little bit about further is collision rates. And so what the platform is allowing people to do is move away from a traditional category management approach, which over the last few years might have been saying, let's reduce suppliers down to a manageable number of maybe a couple of providers per category. The platform is now encouraging procurement to add as many providers into the platform, because the more providers, the more collisions. So the more people that provide the same product, the more saving opportunity that they get. And the third side of the platform is the supplier hub that we've talked about before. And this ability for procurement to fire back these insights to suppliers so they can see not only what's going on, but how that supplier is performing from a sort of commercial standpoint as well. Three sides of the platform, just very quickly. Marketplace, what we've just seen. Market source also there for items that aren't on the platform. And then our most recent module is around inventory management, market materials, tackling the sort of master materials around catalog items. Joel will talk a little bit more about that later. And in terms of benefits, consistently across organizations, we're seeing savings hovering around 15%. And we're talking about some organizations that spend a huge amount of money in catalog sourcing. So these are savings they haven't been able to see or bank previously. We talked a little bit about that buyer journey, reducing. Roche tend to call the platform a platform that creates more time for science, because it is literally taking what used to be a 30-minute process down to under 3, and you multiply that by the thousands of suppliers across all their labs around the world. And the other element just around this drive to automation is the fact that it's reducing procurement's touch by about 60%, because the platform is automating a lot of the manual activity that people used to have to do sitting on the platform.
And Alistair, like I'd just like to highlight like what we just saw once again, right? So as procurement, my job is to get as much content as possible into a central platform and something like Axiom, where my users then punch into from the purchasing system and search in a single user experience and have access to all the data. And with the functionality that you've built on top, since we have all the centralized data, we can compare, we can recommend, we can optimize the baskets, right? Suggest alternative products, etc., because we have all the data in one place, which enables all of this. And then the user sees everything at once, doesn't have to flip through virtual catalogs and do all this work, right? We're serving them that data. And then because we're doing that in a centralized platform, we're getting them out quickly. We're also able to say, hey, procurement, here's what people are searching. Here's how they're saving or not saving. Here's the opportunities to get better, right? And then, hey, suppliers, here's what people have been searching and buying, and here's where you ranked, and here's why you ranked there, and here's the insights that you can use to get more of our business if you want it, right? And so for our three main personas, everybody wins, right? It's a triple win situation, which is crazy because we just flipped the paradigm of managing the data in a centralized location live, right? As live as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And just moving on quickly, one of the questions that we always get asked about a year ago, the first question out of procurement's mouth is, does your platform use AI? It's now evolving slightly from that. But, one of the themes at sort of DBW in particular was about putting AI to work. So, AI is, is for us is more about, what the outcomes are that it delivers rather than which model we use, etc. And unfortunately, we do see some procure tech solutions that are literally just technology with a chat GPT sort of wrapped around it. That's not our platform. If you remember, I talked about our background coming from a sort of data science perspective and wanted to take a data science angle to it. So, there are about 65 different instances of AI, Gen AI, agentic AI on our new module around the automatic creation of master materials for every single catalog purchase that goes through. So, huge amount of things here, which, if you read them, they're all about an outcome rather than a capability. So this is about, helping suppliers, improve the quality of their data. It's about allowing people to make the best buying decision. It's about reducing time. And our view, which I talk about consistently, is, technology isn't the answer on its own. Neither is AI. And I think what our approach is very much, we talk a little bit about Axiom intelligence, and that for us is the platform, it's the AI, but it's also the management resources that come with it. And that's not just about helping clients implement and calibrate the platform, but more importantly, it's about what are the insights in the platform that are being generated? What are they telling you? What can you do? How do you action those insights to drive your category strategy forward? And that sort of combination, I think, is quite powerful. And I think it's what's helping organizations on that digital transformation journey. Anything to add there, Joel?
No, I mean, you said it well, right? Like, instead of focusing on is AI in there, like just assume everybody has some sort of AI, because AI to me is like 13 subdomains, like natural language processing, machine learning, computer vision, etc., right? And they're just tools in a tool belt. So it's like when you ask folks, do you have AI? It's like going to the hardware store and saying, like, do you have hammers? Like, yes, but what what are you trying to do? And we'll use the best tool in the background to ensure that we're getting you the outcome you need. And since you guys have built it up from the ground up with newer technologies, we're not just doing something inefficient faster, right? Or automating something inefficient, but we are centralizing the data and then building on top of it that way, right? With AI capabilities. So I think it's very important to know, yes, AI, but like what subdomain, what's the problem we're trying to solve, and like why are we using that subdomain of AI to solve that problem, right? Is it the most efficient tool to do that, right? Because to your point, everybody can slap like a Gen AI wrapper on top of something and with mixed results.
Yeah. Okay, there are a couple of questions in the chat which we'll just hold on to the end, just because we want to get through the last couple of bits. We'll pick them up in the Q&A at the end. So we just change directions now and just talk about some of the sort of myths that sit around catalogs, and then some of the sort of tricks and tips, if that's okay. So I think, one of the sort of big myths that's circulated around catalogs for many years is it's just about products. And I think most people on the call would realize it's not about that. So it's definitely now about services. And when we talk about services, we're not just talking about simple services that are effectively almost like a product. We're talking about configurable services as well. So that's an area of change. And we're seeing a lot of organizations now looking at how they can re-engineer their services requirements through content-based platforms. Tied to that is the sort of myth of the old school that catalogs are quite simple. Yes, they can be, but they can also be hugely complex. Catalogs, people always think, oh, that's indirect. The answer is no. It sits across direct categories. It's obviously across indirect. It's across strategic sourcing. I think, if you wanted to drill down it, you could sort of argue around the number, but there's 120, 130 categories that utilize catalogs. And as we've talked about on the call earlier, some of these have, real-time instant data update requirements as well. So they are no longer the static environment that they used to be. Sorry for any suppliers on the call, but I think there's a general recognition that data is probably the hardest thing to manage and control. And we recognize that some organizations are intermediaries themselves, so are reliant on a third party to provide data. And also some organizations like the end users, the clients have grown by acquisition. And so you've got different business units coming together with all the data silos that brings to the party as well. And I know people are working very hard to sort of stop these sort of islands of information and the need to try and marry them together. So there's a lot of work there. And also, when we're talking to people about creating APIs, etc. Again, it's very simple to say, create an API, but organizations also we recognize have IT resources that are focused on lots of other different areas as well. So most of the suppliers that sit on the Axiom platform, if they're not connected via API at the moment, are on a pathway or a journey to get there to that nirvana. And then just sort of changing tack again, it's a question we get all the time, is organizations are often in the middle of this massive transformation program to S4HANA. The question, do I need to wait until I've done that? And I think our answer, and Joël, I think you'll support this, is absolutely not. If you're going to wait until you've transitioned to S4HANA, all you're going to do is dump old data in S4HANA, and the time to sort that out is sort of now while you're on that migration. So as you're rolling out your instances of S4HANA, you're starting with a lovely clean slate.
Yeah, and as we switch over to this second side here around tips and tricks, which I promised at the outset of the call for your existing catalog programs, like, as you master your catalog data today, it simplifies as well what you need to transition to an eventual S4 HANA migration if you live in that world, right? So I'd completely support what you're saying, Alistair, and just to make sure we give you those tips, right? So if you're managing a catalog program today, or you're going to set one up with a legacy or a traditional, as you politically correctly call them, Alistair, system, right? Make sure you have a catalog map, right? So what are your different systems? If you only have one, great, right? But what are the suppliers? Do they have different regional catalogs? Do you have hosted versus punch-out catalogs? So really just keeping tabs on what is connected to which system by which catalog, which supplier, and what your contact persons are for that, right? Whether it's IT or your sales representatives, like that. Just having that organized will bring your catalog program to the next level, and make sure that you're keeping tabs on fresh content. Second thing, which is something that, Alistair, you touched on in terms of something you do natively in the platform with Axiom, but that you can do in these other platforms as well, it just requires a bit more work, is making sure that you're only serving the data that users need in their job role through the catalog platform, right? Because remember, right now it's like flipping through virtual catalogs, right? And so if I give you 120 catalogs, I need to start figuring out, okay, which categories apply to me, which suppliers apply to me, where am I going to go get my stuff? And so I should be only viewing stuff that is for my geography, for my job role, for my country or business unit. And one thing you can do is just go sit down with requesters while they're using catalogs, right? It sounds so simple, but nobody does it, right? Go sit down with them and see how they're navigating through the catalogs to get to a submitted requisition or order in your system. And you will see the pain points live that we discussed at the outset of this call, right? And it'll kind of blow your mind, right? So how are we thinking about that user experience to get what we want, which is, as procurement, right, savings, or as suppliers, more business? understanding the collision rates, right? So do I have sufficient competition? Like, let's say you negotiated two preferred suppliers for industrial supplies. Like, you want to have those two catalogs available, but you don't want to have like 7 catalogs, at least not in the current paradigm. In the Axiom world, you want to have as many catalogs as possible, right? Because you want to serve up results to the users in a single place. But in a reality where you're asking users to punch in, punch out, punch in, punch out, etc., you want to make sure you're strategic around how much content you send their way, while also giving them the ability to compare prices across preferred suppliers. Same thing, start changing or next thing I should say, start changing your language. So you want to start championing, stop talking about catalogs and catalog data, start talking about content, services. And when you change the verbiage, people have less reflexes, right? And you're able to change the conversation and talk about something different. Become the data champion as well, right? So all of these things are about giving the right data to the right people at the right time. And so making sure that you're working with suppliers on how we can improve their data, set targets, and measure is something that you can do today manually, right? On top of your catalog program when you audit catalogs with suppliers to get the results that you want. And then the last thing is understanding the relationship with material masters, right? So if you have something in inventory that is using MRP that has a material in your system, it probably shouldn't be in the catalog, and vice versa, right? Because you want to give users one way to buy things and for it to be very clear. And to have clean data, buying data at the end that you can look at from a consolidated standpoint to change your strategy, right? So that's something, another quick tip is making sure you revise what your governance rules are around material creation, and that you may have, a branch in your decision tree where it's like, nope, we got to get catalog data for that, right? Or add it to an existing catalog, or ask a supplier to start offering up that product, right? And so integrating your catalog data with your material master creation processes is something that you should be doing if you're on a traditional catalog management program. And it also feeds into that S4HANA piece, right? So you'll realize, oh, okay, we can get rid of a lot of material masters. And just an example, I was having a conversation on LinkedIn this morning about Gatorade being a material in one of my clients' systems, right? And so being able to go, probably not, right? That's probably not something we want to spend a lot of money on creating, maintaining, governing, and cleansing material data for. So anyways, these are all quick tips, things that you should be thinking about if you're hosting a traditional punch-out and hosted catalog program.
Fantastic. So Joel, I think we've covered a fair breadth of topics there, but I think just sort of a few points to sort of summarize, and then there's a couple of questions in the chat we'll try and get to. I think basically catalog content-based sourcing is only going to increase. It is increasing. We see global enterprise organizations now seeing this as a strategic buying channel in their procurement transformation programs. So it's not going to go away. We just need to make it smarter and easier. I think we've explored and done to death the fact that the current source-to-pay suites might be okay at handling a couple of single catalogs if you're a very simple organization, but the more complexity, the more categories, the more user groups, the more countries, different requirements, they just can't handle that level of complexity in very highly complex enterprise organizations. With the other area that we've touched on a little bit, but is going to be an area of huge sort of focus, is the outcome of this. Yes, it's great to make things easier, but procurement wants automation. This, as I said before, this whole 80-20 split that we see in procurement, where you've got 80% of resources focused on 20% of your spend in the tail environment, is just unbelievable when you step back and think about that. So the drive in these enterprise organizations is low touch, self-service, high automation, because if they're spending money on expensive resources, they want those resources focused on areas that are going to add massive value to the business. So a little plug from me, if you are in a environment that some of that resonates we're just a phone call away. One of the beauties of the Axiom platform is that we can deploy very quickly. So by the autumn, you could be benefiting like a number of global organizations are. And then finally, I'm sure everybody on the call is following Joël. If you're not, then you should be. As he said to begin with, he's here sort of as an independent voice, helping organizations drive their digital transformation programs. And if that's not your space, then every week, Sunday night, as I said on a comment earlier this week, Sunday nights wouldn't be the same without the the newsletter that Joël publishes. Joël, how many consecutive weeks have you published now for?
Ooh, I think I'm in the hundreds now, or over 100 now. But it's been going on since 2020, where, to me, it's really just around how do I help procurement understand what the art of the possible is with technology, and then how do we achieve strategies and objectives that are business based by enabling it with tech, right? And so there's a bridge or there's a gap to bridge there, I should say, and that's what I'm working on diligently. And so yeah, I do that through the newsletter on Sunday nights and through my solo consulting practice as well. But I am only one man, so that's why I try to pump stuff out through the newsletter. But this to me is a game changer, right? Where if I can align the interests and the incentives for all the stakeholders that are around content-based purchasing and sourcing, then I unlock a whole bunch of business capabilities that allow me to execute on my strategy, my objectives, and even change my strategy for better resource allocation. And so I was happy to collaborate today.
Fantastic. Thanks, Joël. Lydia, I think I'm going to hand over to you for the last tiny bit.
Yeah, no problem. We've got a little QR code on there that will take you to all the resources we've spoken about today, including Joël's amazing newsletter that he's done on there about SAP, Ariba guided buying. So yeah, give that a read. Really, really good. And we've also got the slides on there. I was going to say as well, if you don't mind, Alistair, we've got a poll. Our next webinar is on the 24th of September about free text ordering. So we've just got to make it really easy for you guys who've joined live. If you'd like to register for that, if you want to say yes or no, that'll be incredible. And then we can sign you up automatically for that so you can make it on the 24th. Don't know if you found the poll yet, Alistair. You got it?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get it live.
Amazing.
And in the meantime, I want to apologize to folks who asked questions that we couldn't get to. We didn't think there would be this many. And maybe we have I can stay on, Alistair, as well. I don't know if you guys have a hard stop, but we can answer a couple more questions if folks want to stay on.
Yeah, what I was going to suggest actually, Joël, is I'm very happy because I'm just conscious people have given up a huge amount of their time. I will respond to every question tomorrow in writing because I suspect people have got hard stops. Lydia, for some reason your poll isn't working, but let's do it manually.
No problem. Yeah, if anyone wants to drop in, if they want to come, just put yes in the chat and I'll make sure to register you for the next webinar. Oh, amazing. Getting some yeses in there. But yeah, I just wanted to say a massive thank you to everyone joining today. Like, it's incredible the turnout we've had for the first Axiom webinar, and a massive thank you to Alistair and Joël for today's session. If you want to share any feedback, send it over to lydia.venables@axiomdata.io. I'll add that into the chat because yeah, if you've got any ideas about what you want covering or any questions that you didn't get asked today, just send them over to me and I'll be happy to get Alistair or Joël to answer those. But yeah, thank you so much. I hope everyone has a lovely summer and hopefully we'll see you at the next webinar.